This was not my planned video. Honestly, I don't want to do this video. I've had many requests from people who've been watching my videos over the last 6 months, and they want to hear about my health journey. But I have been really reluctant to make this video, and I wasn't sure why until today. I was scrolling Facebook this morning when I saw the notice on Elena's pantry page that she had died. Elena Amsterdam is a fellow celiac, so I have followed her for years. I have her cookbook, I've made her recipes. I found encouragement during my celiac journey because of the work that she put in to helping people understand that disease. And that made me go to her page or her blog page to find out, what has happened here. And I hadn't realized how bad her health had gotten. And I read her last blog post, which was just a few weeks ago. And she was just in a bad place, just a bad place. And she worked hard to be healthy and yet still had health issues. She still kept getting knocked down. This cancer and this cancer and this new autoimmune disease. And that's when it hit me. The reason why I just haven't wanted to make this video. You see, because no matter how much pain and suffering I've gone through from my fine collection of autoimmune diseases and the multiple strains of Lyme disease that I have, and the countless co-infections and the mold toxicity, there are always people who have it worse. And because I'm so prone to positivity, that's how I got through some of my worst years of sickness. Is I would always just say, somebody out there has it worse than me. Somebody out there is suffering more than I am. So buck it up and take it, just deal with this. And whether that was healthy or not, I can't really say. Because no matter what, no matter if there was somebody worse than I was at the time, I was in absolute misery. And if someone else had said that to me, it would not have brought me comfort. The truth was, it was just hard. It was hard. It was painful. My family paid a great price for it. And there were some dark, dark days. So I realized I feel guilty making a video about my health journey because somebody could be watching it that's in the midst of those dark days, and it could make them resentful or it could cause them pain. And that is the last thing that I ever would want to do. But I want to honor my subscribers and the people who've requested this video because maybe they need it. I don't know why people keep requesting it, but what I want to say is if you are a person that is in the midst of a valley right now, and you're watching this video and you start feeling prone to resentment because I have gotten on the other side of sickness, I want you to know that I see you. You're not alone. I do see, and I know what it's like. I know how hard it is to be in those dark days and to feel alone. And I just want you to know that I see you. I see you, and I hurt for you. But I want to encourage you to please don't stop searching for answers. But in that search, you will probably not find them in your doctor's office. That saddens me to say, but I find it to be true. So advocate for yourself. Study and learn things for yourself. And if you have a loved one in your life that is willing to step up and advocate for you, you have a gold mine there, and please appreciate that person because it costs them a lot to study and research for you. So appreciate that. That's a treasure. So today I'm going to share with you my personal story. This is my experience. This is the road I have walked down. Your road is going to be very different, and the things that have worked for me might not work for you. But there are some core things, some base things that have to do with health, and some have to do with mindset that really did help me to get to this side of sickness that I think would help you too. I believe it would help majority of the people. So I'm going to share those things with you as I share my story with you. And I'm sorry if this gets a little long. Sadly, my health journey has been a long one. But please know, I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional. I am simply a woman who had to advocate for herself because the medical community failed me over and over again. And so this is my story. If you're new to my channel, wow, you came in on a very deep video. So welcome. My name is Carrie Stone, and this is Carry On, where we usually talk money, movement, and mindset. But today, we're talking about the decades of sickness that I walked through in order to get to the place that I could start this channel where we talk about money, movement, and mindset. And the reason these things became so important to me is because I had to fight so hard just to be alive. So this is my story. I grew up the youngest of three girls. Grew up in a little town in Delaware. I was the healthy one. My dad has Crohn's disease and was in and out of the hospital often throughout my childhood. My oldest sister had bad allergies. We were always in with her getting shots and things like that to deal with her allergies. My middle sister was born with a cleft lip and palate. So she was in and out of Children's Hospital with surgeries to correct her birth defects. And so I was the healthy one. I was the one nobody really needed to pay much attention to because I just had normal childhood things. Until I was 11 years old. My grandfather disappeared on Mother's Day. That caused a lot of chaos and stress, obviously, in my family. And I don't remember how long after it this was, but I felt something on the back of my knee, and my dad was visiting with a friend in our family room, and the friend looked at the lump on the back of my knee, saw that it was a tick, nonchalantly pulled it off and sent me on my way. This was in the early 80s, so there was no talk of Lyme disease outside of Lyme, Connecticut. And nobody checked for a bullseye rash, and of course I wasn't looking behind my knee. But at that point, I played catcher on the softball team. And I had never had issues with playing that position when suddenly I started having trouble getting up and down. My knee hurt all the time. I had never had knee trouble, and all of a sudden I'm wearing a knee brace and I'm struggling to get up and down from the catcher position. I was also starting to throw up and pass out after every game from the equipment, and I had never had that problem before. But because my grandfather had disappeared and was not found, my mom was still searching for him. My mom had a hysterectomy, and the downturn in my parents' marriage started. Nobody was really noticing these things. And then I was also getting to the age where I had to choose between sports and music, and obviously I chose music. So it was just kind of forgotten that I was having that problem. My parents divorced. I moved with my mom to an island off of the coast of Maryland where there were biting flies and mosquitoes, and I was eaten alive that summer by all the insects. And never thought much about that either, till my high school career was spent sick. I was always sick, always. I had mono or strep throat. I was on antibiotics all the time. And then I started having weird things popping up. And they would pop up and then be gone, pop up and be gone. And this became the pattern of my life. The first thing that popped up was I just dropped 20 pounds one month. I hadn't seen my mom for the month, and I remember she opened the door to let me into her apartment, and she looked at me, started crying, ran to the phone, called my dad, and yelled at him, thinking he's not feeding me. And the next day she took me to the doctor, and because my parents were divorced, it was assumed I had either bulimia or anorexia, to which my mother laughed. And the doctor said, "This is not a laughing matter." And my mother said, "Well, you would laugh too if you knew my daughter. She loves to eat and she hates to throw up. Like, she'll literally cry and beg to not throw up," which was true and is still true today. So my mom knew I didn't have an eating disorder, but the doctors didn't really invest much in trying to figure out what was wrong with me. They just told her to give me potatoes and ice cream, help me put the weight back on. Yeah. Anywho, the next year, I had this severe pain in my tailbone, could not sit down. It was so excruciatingly painful. And the doctors they immediately just were like, "That's because you're in marching band." I said, "Why? Why is that because I'm in marching band?" "Well, it's just slamming up and down on the metal benches." I said, "I don't slam up and down on metal benches because I got my dad's bottom and it has no meat on it. So you don't slam down on metal when you have a bony butt." And so they had no answers. They just sent me to PT, and one day, miraculously, the pain just disappeared. And so this became my normal. And because I had a dad who had Crohn's disease, and I had a sister who had, cleft lip and palate and had her issues, that's when I started the habit of, well, I'm not as bad as that, to justify all the things in my body. So when my body wasn't working right, I would think, yeah, but I don't have cancer. Yeah, but I'm not as sick as this person. If you're doing that, I have to say, don't do that to yourself. Whatever you're going through, it's your reality. Stop discounting your symptoms just because somebody else has it worse. It's not healthy. And I did this to myself for a long time. And I have to admit, I still often find myself doing it, because now I compare myself today to who I was when I was really sick. So I discount stuff that's going on in me today because, well, I'm not as bad as I was. And now it's causing me issues with my throat and my ear because I've been ignoring things. So whatever you're going through, it's valid, and I just want you to know that. So I spent most of my high school career on antibiotics, destroying my gut. And that was the solution in the 80s. Whatever you had, you've got the flu, here's some antibiotics. You've got a headache, here's some antibiotics. You got, mono again, here's some antibiotics. And then I was told you can't have mono more than once. Well, guess what? I had it all the time. Well, it turns out I have Epstein-Barr virus. So, yeah, it can flare up and you can have it more than once. So I got through high school and I lived a very stressful life. I did professional theater, I was in voice, and I was in band, and I overdid everything and overworked myself all the time. I think trying to get acceptance and love. Again, not a healthy way to live. Well, I got into my 20s, and by this point, I was in a very emotionally damaging relationship, and I was a workaholic. I was in real estate, so commission only, and the stress was intense. When I was 23, I had a bad car accident, and I had such severe whiplash things. I couldn't lift my left arm, and I couldn't do anything by myself, but I was commission only, and I could not drive, and I couldn't work. And it was a very frustrating time. But my sister, who was a nurse, took me in to her place so that she could take care of me, which ended up being an amazing thing, because 2 months and 11 days later, she was killed in a car accident. That kind of stress and trauma can really mess with your body. And that one certainly did for me. She was my best friend, my whole world. And I was really grateful to have that 2 months and 11 days with her. But her death really wreaked havoc on my body. That following year was an awful, awful year. People kept dying. And it wasn't old people who had lived good, happy lives. It was young people. It was tragic deaths just all year. It was so horrible. And a year after my accident, I had to go in for surgery to repair an injury that I had had from my car accident. And my lungs collapsed on the table and I almost died. Again, more trauma on my body. So my body kept collecting all this trauma, and I didn't come from a very healthy place where you process. I was kind of brought up with, you stuff everything down and you just get over it. And of course, I'm a Gen Xer too, so we had that philosophy. So as I went through my 20s, I was noticing by this point that I was different than everybody else. I couldn't stay out late and get up early in the morning and go to work. Like, my life did not work that way. But it wasn't until I packed my car up and moved to Nashville in 1994. And I met my roommate, who was so different from me. And she would talk about, oh no, my period's gonna come the day that I have this marathon to run. I was like, oh, you're gonna have to cancel. And she's like, no. I was like, you don't have to cancel. Like, you could go running when you've got your period. And she said, yeah. I said, how do you do that? And I said, and how do you know that you're gonna have your period that day? And she goes, how do you know you're not going to have yours? And I was like, mine just shows up. And she's like, well, mine comes every 28 days like a normal person. And I was like, you get a period every 28 days? Yeah, I started realizing rather quickly I was not normal. And there were other things that just would be too much information to share. But I was realizing, yeah, I did not have a normal system. Bowel movements, periods, all those things. My life was very different than the average person. And then a year later, I met my husband and I started learning more about what's normal and what's not. And I was blown away. Well, he realized very quickly that I was not a healthy person, even though I obsessively studied health. I was on a quest to find good health because I knew I didn't feel good. But any doctor I went to told me I was healthy. They said I was healthy and strong, and I would tell them about my bowel issues and things, and they just said, well, people are different. But my husband was really bothered by the fact that I always carried a bottle of Dimetap with me. And I would just have this bottle of Dimetap and I'd swig on it all the time because my allergies were so bad. And moving to Nashville made them worse. The Native Americans called Nashville the Valley of the Sick. And boy, is that true, because it's this valley that collects all the pollen and things. So I ended up on inhalers and getting steroid shots and all kinds of things just so I could sing. I struggled with breathing. I disappointed people all the time because I would have to cancel recording sessions because I could not breathe. And this was how my life was going. So I marry a health nut and I start even more pursuing health. And it seemed like the more I pursued health, the sicker I got. And it was very frustrating. So here I was in Nashville, where we had Vanderbilt University and some of the top doctors in the world in their fields. So I went to an ENT who was the ENT for Bill Clinton. He just pumps me full of steroids, sends me on my way. My grandmother was diagnosed with colon cancer. And so having a dad with Crohn's disease and a grandmother now with colon cancer, and here I had been having bowel issues for years. I mean, years. I never knew what it was like to have normal bowels. So I go to the top gastrointestinal doctor in the world. He looks at me and says, "You're just an aging performer trying to get attention." I was like, yeah, that totally explains my explosive diarrhea and these weird flus I get that nobody else gets. That does explain that. So every time I would have an experience like this, my trust in the medical system was dropping. I would like to say in all of this time, in all of my years of going to doctors saying, my bowels are not normal, I'm very concerned, I have these genetic markers, I'm worried. I was never once told about celiac disease. Not one time. Not one time. My female issues became a problem when we wanted to start a family. I got very lucky in that I did happen to find a great doctor who specialized in helping women to get pregnant. And she was able to do my endometrial surgery and remove as much as she could of the endometriosis so that I could get pregnant. And I was able to get pregnant 2 times. I had hard pregnancies, and the second delivery was really bad. And the second delivery is kind of what triggered my autoimmune avalanche that happened. So after my daughter was born, I got really sick the first time. And it took a while. And because I had lost trust in the doctors, especially since another doctor had just almost killed my daughter in the hospital, I really did not have any trust in anyone. And I was trying to figure things out for myself. And the more I was doing that, the more I was poisoning myself. I was adding wheat bran and wheat germ to everything that I cooked. I learned to make my own bread and my own granola, and I was doing wheatgrass shots. I was doing everything basically slowly killing myself, thinking that I was doing good things for your body. And it wasn't until my daughter was 2.5 and she had learned how to peel an orange, and she was so excited to show Daddy how she could peel an orange. And she was doing that at the dinner table. I was sitting across the table, and I start having an asthmatic attack. I could not breathe. I couldn't function at all, and scared everybody. My husband found my inhalers. I did those. I got away from the orange. And once I settled down, my husband looked at me and said, "I can't take this anymore. You are slowly dying in front of me." And I just thought I was hiding it. My hair was falling out by the handfuls. I had black circles under my eyes. I looked like an African child, starving child. I could touch my fingers around my arms. Like I had no muscle. And I could touch my fingers around my legs. That's how bony and skinny I was. But I had a distended belly that I could hide in long, flowy cotton dresses. And that's what I did. I would hide my body under long sleeves and flowy things because it was obvious that I was starving. I would eat 10 times a day, and I was starving so much. I was so hungry. But I had no trust in the medical community. I had lost it. And finally, we decided we lived in an area where there's a lot of naturopaths, but unfortunately there's a lot of bad naturopaths too. So finally, I literally took a phone book. We still used those at the time. And I just kind of went shh, like this. My finger landed on a name and I recognized it. And I remembered ladies at church talking about this particular naturopath and how she specialized in women's health. I also remember them talking about the long waiting list. So the next day, I called her office and they told me she has a 6-month waiting list, but we're happy to put you on it. So I said, okay, put me on the waiting list. I ate some yogurt and then I went to the bank. And I'm standing in the bank and I'm thinking, I'm going to be really sick. And then I asked if I could use the bathroom and they said no, it was for employees only. I remember going out to my car and realizing I am halfway between my house or the hospital. Which direction do I go? Because the pain was that bad. But because of my lack of trust, I went home. I got to a place that I could actually talk because I was hurting so bad I could barely speak. And I called that doctor's office again. And I'm crying. And I said, I don't have 6 months. My kids are young and I am dying. I'm in the bathroom every night after my husband goes to sleep and I'm writing my will and letters to my kids. Could you please get me in to see this doctor? He asked me to hold and he came back and he said, if you can come in this afternoon and fill out paperwork, she can see you tomorrow. So I did. And that was my first diagnosis. She knew after 5 minutes with me, she knew exactly what was wrong with me. She told me to go eat whatever wheat-filled things that I love. And the next morning I was to get blood work done and she would call me when the results came in. So on December 14th of 2005, I learned I have celiac disease. And sadly, in this country, in the US, it takes an average of 11 years to get that diagnosis. So since I am the person who makes lemonade out of the lemons that life throws her, I grabbed celiac by the throat and I just owned it. And I studied everything I could and I learned all I could about it. And my doctor said these things to me. She said, once you get through the first 6 months and get through the withdrawal period that you have to go through to get off of gluten, she said, you are going to feel amazing. You're gonna feel better than you have ever felt in your life. And in about 5 years, your body will begin to show you what it's been hiding. Because celiac disease doesn't just happen. Other things are going on if you have celiac disease. And I was like, not me, because I'm going to be the ultimate celiac, right? I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to be the junk food eating celiac. I'm going to be the healthy celiac. And I did that. I did everything you could do to live a healthy celiac life. Well, over the next 5 years, life was amazing and awful. It had so many great ups, and then it had so many big downs. And the stresses of life, again, brought out what the celiac disease had been hiding. And it was just about 5 years to the day when I was back in her office because I had been having all of these weird things happening for months, and all the doctors again were telling me it was in my head. I was a hypochondriac. I was making this stuff up and all this, and I was losing hope. And I went to her and I said, you saved my life once. I need you to do it again. At this point, I was having bouts of my legs not working for days at a time. They would just stop working. And I couldn't stand, I couldn't sit, I couldn't walk, I couldn't get to the bathroom by myself. And then it would just be fine. So it'd be 3 days, 5 days bedridden, and then I'd be fine. And then this Mother's Day, my father-in-law had just died, and that was pretty traumatic for me to lose him. So we came back. I had gotten contaminated with some gluten on that trip, and I wasn't feeling great, but I was singing for a Mother's Day tea at church. And so I can remember not feeling that great when I went because I had been contaminated. But I got there and I sang, and it was probably my worst performance I had ever done up to that point. And I just knew I needed to get home. So I get out to the car and I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it home. But I pushed through. I was 7 minutes away. I pushed through. I drove home. I put pajamas on, and my life completely changed. Mother's Day, the next week, I got up, I got dressed, I fixed myself up and got pictures with my kids, and I was particularly grouchy, and I couldn't figure out why. Like I wasn't feeling any reason to be grouchy, but I just felt completely out of control of my emotions. We're at church and we're singing worship when my legs gave out. I collapsed, and the next thing you know, I woke up. I opened my eyes to like everybody looking at me like, what's going on? And I had had my first seizure. And I remember being dragged out of the church and brought home. The next Saturday, I had a dream, I thought, but it was real. I had a dream that I had this really bad pain in my head, and I felt very confused. And I somehow got myself, I tried to call out, and I couldn't call out to anybody. And so I somehow got myself from my bedroom out to our media room. And I was trying to get downstairs, and I was trying to get to call for help, but I couldn't speak. And I had a really bad pain on my left side. My head was pounding, and it was just sharp, sharp pain. And the next thing I knew, my family was looking down at me as I was laying on the futon. I don't even remember laying on the futon. But that was when I had my mini stroke. It took me the whole rest of the summer going from doctor to doctor, being told I was a hypochondriac, before I got back to my original naturopath who had saved my life. She did a bunch of blood work, and she said, you know, I don't know why, but I want to run some Lyme tests on you. Well, my husband had watched people die with Lyme disease. So I'm like, no, I don't have Lyme disease or cancer. I had made that decision. Not so much for that. She runs the test. She calls me the next day, and she says, you need a Lyme specialist. And my husband and I just looked at each other like, this cannot be happening. We found a Lyme specialist and began that journey. And it was a hard one. It was hard. It was expensive. And you guys, this is part of my guilt. I got really lucky that I had one of my husband's best friends who was willing to pay for all of my medical treatment that insurance will not cover, because insurance will not cover chronic Lyme disease. And to truly get through chronic Lyme, your treatments are not going to be covered by insurance. So I was able to go to a world-renowned Lyme doctor, and it was not inexpensive. And I did a lot of antibiotics, multiple ones at a time, destroyed my gut even more. Through her, I found out that I had many, many strains of Lyme, along with many debilitating and life-threatening co-infections. I had 5 toxic levels of mold, and that's what was causing the seizures. And yeah, I was just one sick woman. I felt validated finally. after having doctors telling me I was a hypochondriac, but it didn't make it easier to go through it. So here I was, a homeschool mom, and trying to not die, trying to still school my kids and be a good mom. And I put a lot of stress on them. And my son was my primary caretaker for many of those years. Most of the time I was very bedridden. There were days my legs just would not work. I couldn't be left alone. I couldn't do the stairs, so I couldn't cook a lot of the time. It was just a very stressful time. And had I not had the help to get all the things that I needed, I don't know if I would be alive today. But I can say this, if I had to go back, if I didn't have that financial help, the things I would have done and the things I would not have done have been very different. I don't think I would have done those long-term antibiotics. I actually now, looking back, I'm not sure I'd be alive if I didn't do the antibiotics, but at the same time, I kind of wish I had tried more natural things first, because I have seen the greatest improvement in my health since I went more natural as opposed to poisoning my body with a lot of different antibiotics. And I will be dealing with my gut issues for the rest of my life because of the amount of antibiotics that I have had in my life. Some of the things that helped me, though, I had always been goal-oriented. So one of my roles through my sick years was I had a goal every single month. And it was always something at that point to improve my health. So maybe it would be to drink 100 ounces of water, or to not eat corn. When I was dealing with the 5 toxic levels of mold, I couldn't have corn, peanut butter, tomatoes, canned goods, things like that. So I realized I don't do well with just changing everything at once. So I would just change something every month, and I would build upon each change. It gave me something to focus on, and it gave me something to celebrate. And I need to always have celebration. So that helped me a lot. I kept a really positive attitude. Now, mind you, again, I'm a very, very positive person, and I always can find the good in everything. And so I just really focused on that, on finding joy, even in the midst of the adversity, to where my Lyme doctor used to say, could you just come sit in the waiting room and talk to all the people out there so that you can help them to be more joyful, because you're like the happiest patient. She told me at one point that I was her sickest and yet happiest patient. So she always looked forward to me coming in there. I just found I had a choice how I was going to handle it. I could be negative and whiny, but then my kids would grow up having to be exposed to that, and I didn't want that. And my husband was under so much pressure, I didn't want him more unhappy. And so I worked really hard at just being joyful and happy and finding the good in the situation. And that helped me a lot. So having goals towards getting better, goals towards things that would help me to be stronger, and then finding the good in everything, it made a difference for me. Some of the things that I've done in the last 5 years that I think have been the most effective, I started seeing an herbalist down in California. And first of all, I think it's his positive attitude. He's so hopeful, and that's really great to be around. But working with him on an herbal level and giving my body, what it needs, I have seen a lot of improvement. A year ago, I started acupuncture. And again, acupuncturists are like naturopaths. There are great ones and there are bad ones. I got really, really lucky. I have the best acupuncturist in the world. She is so amazing. And she has also dealt with chronic health issues. So she understands me, and that makes my experience with her even better. So that has greatly impacted my life in very profound ways. Also using nutritional IVs. In my sickest years, I had a PICC line and I did 2 IVs a week. And that really got me through a lot because I could not eat enough or digest enough to get the nutrition that I needed. Now I do IVs twice a month, and that is something that it can feel expensive, but it's really not that bad. And when it comes to the benefits you get from having that nutrition in your body, I think far outweighs the cost. But there are IV bars like opening up everywhere now. Like even our last trip to Nashville, I was still able to get IVs on that trip because I had like several locations I could choose from to go get IVs. If you want to know what I get, I usually do the Myers cocktail with a glutathione shot, and that works really well for me. I do a sauna. I think saunas and heat therapy in itself is really great. I was told recently, ideally, what you want per week is 57 minutes of heat therapy and 11 minutes of cold therapy to get the most out of each one. You don't want them all at one time because you don't want to do like a sauna or a hot bath for longer than 30 minutes. And you don't really want to do cold plunging and things for more than 2 minutes at a time. So those are the numbers that I was told recently, and I am finding those to be very helpful. But I've had my sauna for about 12, 13 years, and it's worth every penny. And I have gotten a lot of benefit out of that. I'll put the similar one in the description below so you can see that. You know, I talk a lot about movement on this channel, and I talk about it because back when I couldn't really walk and do things, my husband was always concerned about that. And he would say, a body in motion stays in motion. And he would encourage me all the time, Carrie, please just get up and move. Just do something. This isn't good for you to just be laying here. And so I would push myself just to get up with my cane or my walker and just walk to the end of the hall and back. And I started small and I started slow, but forcing myself to keep my body moving was the best thing I ever did. I know when you feel like garbage, it's just easier to lay there and wallow in that. But I'm telling you, my pain levels have dropped so much since I started increasing my movement more and more. And I never want to live in that kind of pain again. And I've noticed if I'm having a bad day and maybe I'm sitting more, I hurt all over. And that's how I used to feel all the time. So I can't stress enough how important movement has been. So am I healed? No, I'm not healed. I'm a lot better than I was, but my health is my job. It is my number one priority. I have to always take care of me. I might be able to get away with one junk food meal, but I'll pay for it. But it's not really worth doing that to my body. So my budget goes mostly to food, organic, free range, healthy, good meats, good veggies, all those things. High protein. I prioritize my health, where other people might prioritize going to Hawaii. I prioritize IVs, supplements, and health. But look at me now. Like 10 years ago, I could never have made a video like this. Just the energy that it would take at that time to shower and put makeup on and dry my hair. I just didn't have that kind of energy. I can remember times that I would get all showered, dry my hair, get makeup on to go to church. And by the time I did it all, I was exhausted and I'd collapse in bed. So now, I can do these things. I just have to always listen to my body and be kind to myself. So this is my health journey in a nutshell. I hope that the steps that I take now will keep me from ever being that sick again. But when I read Alana's notice today on Facebook and saw all the diseases that she kept getting after she would work so hard to be healthy. I admit it brings up some fear, but I can't live in fear, and you can't live in fear. And each of us has a different road to walk. I'm a collector of fine autoimmune diseases that are hard to diagnose and impossible to cure and expensive to treat. That's my specialty. I hope that I have collected enough of them and I don't need any more. But, maybe you're in the same boat. I don't know. I hope you have found this video encouraging somehow. All I can say is this. Whatever you're going through, it's not by chance. Take time to listen to your body. Trust your instincts. Even when the doctors tell you you're wrong, trust your instincts. You know more. You can feel stuff that no one could ever see or feel. So trust your instincts. Listen to your body. And whatever you do, be kind to you. It's really easy in the midst of sickness to put ourselves down and to just be disappointed in who we are in that moment. But find the good. Find the good. Your body is fighting a battle for you. So feed it good things, nourish it, hydrate it, move it, do all you can to give it everything that it needs to get on the other side of sickness. If you're going through sickness right now, I am really, really sorry. But you are not alone. Let me know in the comments below. Are you in the midst of sickness? Have you overcome? Are you helping somebody through sickness? I'd love to hear your story. I don't know which video to link to this, so YouTube will recommend the next video that they think you'll like. And until next time, carry on.